Then we have Senior Counsel Mihir Desai, who is Vice President of PUCL National, who will moderate this conversation as well as speak on whether this given current EVM system ensures our right to vote as guaranteed by our constitution. Mihir, now over to you.
Thank you, Sandhya. It's a pleasure welcoming all of you here on an issue which has been simmering since a long time. There are various grievances raised about the EVM itself. Some of them appear to be very, very genuine and very reasonable apprehensions. Some of them, on the other hand, appear to be absurd because people are not really familiar with how the EVM actually works and what is the manner of tempering it. How can you temper it? We are not here to say, at least I don't think many of us are here to say that go back to the ballot boxes. We are saying that you can have an EVM system, but that EVM and voting by EVM system, but the present EVM system, despite it getting a veneer of technology savvy, etc., 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 that system is still prone to acute misuse, which can change the entire voting pattern. Those possibilities are very strong. Not only that, I think what both the speakers will be speaking about is that while these problems are there, namely tampering with EVM machine, VVPAT boxes, then the control unit, etc., which can really change the whole nature of the election. These are matters which can be solved. These are matters which can be which we can control and which we can resolve in a manner that the system becomes functional, becomes effective. So that is what we are going to speak about, the problems with the EVM as it is presently, and how do you resolve them with technology, and on the basis of that make a demand to the Election Commission and, if required, to the courts, that these are the things which should be done. Otherwise, there is likely to be a major problem with the way the elections are conducted. Now, remember one thing, our constitution, and it has been interpreted by the Supreme Court time and again, that democracy is a part of our basic structure of the constitution. So democracy is not something which you can do away even with a constitutional amendment. And democracy obviously means right to vote. I mean, direct participation in election, direct participation to vote. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has time to time said that while voting is while right to vote, right to exercise your franchise is a fundamental right, is not a fundamental right, is a statutory right. It may be a constitutional right, but it is not a fundamental right. This is a very problematic interpretation according to me, because though right to vote is not mentioned in the fundamental rights chapter, the right to freedom of speech and expression is mentioned in the fundamental rights chapter. And when you are actually casting your vote, you are actually expressing you're exercising your freedom of expression, your freedom of speech. So that is, I think, something which is very important in terms of it being treated as a fundamental right. But nevertheless, okay, the courts have always held that voting is something which is central to our electoral process, the right to vote. And the Constitution itself provides for mechanism to have free and fair elections. And one of the mechanisms is, of course, the appointment of the election commissioner. Because election commissioner, who is a constitutional body, not just a body by some law, it's a constitutional body. In fact, the election commission cannot be removed except in the manner in which a judge of the Supreme Court can be removed. That's what the Constitution provides. So election commission is a very important body. The election commissioner, he or she lays down, okay, prescribes what is the method in which the elections are to be conducted. He is the one who says that, look, we are going to now resort to EVMs. He is the one who says how many EVMs have to be there, where all they are required, what are the constituency, etc. So election commission is very, very important. Any complaint concerning election has to be made to the election commission. Now, you might have read recently that the Supreme Court had said that the appointment of the election commission should be done by a 3-member committee, which will have the Prime Minister, which will have the leader of the opposition, and which will have the Chief Justice as the 3 persons who will select who the election commission is going to be, because that post is crucial, okay, for elections. Unfortunately, now a law has been passed in the Parliament by which the Chief Justice has been removed and a minister to be nominated by Prime Minister has been put in place of the Chief Justice. So you'll have 2 persons from the ruling party, 1 person from the opposition. Obviously, the reason why this is done is quite clear. I need not go into that. Okay? But as I was saying, the right to vote is also there are a number of cases in the Supreme Court over the last 20-25 years where individuals and organizations have gone demanding that if I have a right to vote, I must have enough knowledge about the candidate for whom I'm voting. And therefore, the Supreme Court from time to time has said that yes, if there is a criminal antecedents, they must be revealed. What are the assets of a person who is contesting the election must be available to the people. They must know what are the criminal cases, what are the assets, etc. Various aspects have to be told, because ultimately you have to be an aware citizen who exercises the right to vote. Similarly, right to secret ballot in direct elections has been upheld by the courts. The courts itself introduced the provision of nota, that a person may not want to vote for anybody, but still wants to say that I don't like any of the parties. So you have, so nota has been introduced. All these things have been there. Similarly, some of the issues concerning EVM have also been tried in the Supreme Court. One of the issues, one of the first issues was that initially, when VVPACs were introduced, okay, only 2 boxes, okay, from a particular constituency, okay, were to be randomly checked through VVPACs, okay, VVPA box. Supreme Court intervened, said not 2 but 5, okay, per constituency, which according to us is still very, very, very small as to the amount of checking which has to be done. But to that extent, they intervened. But Supreme Court has been reluctant to intervene as far as whether EVM should be there at all or not. That the Supreme Court says it's not our job to decide whether EVM should be there or not. If there is any defect in the EVM, if there is a problem with the way the EVMs are functioning, you can of course bring it to our notice. But we are not the experts to decide whether EVM should be there or not. Recently, we just and there are cases pending in the Supreme Court concerning validity of EVMs, the manner in which EVMs are. Like earlier, there was a case, and there was a instance where lakhs of EVM machines were missing, and that went to the court. So you have had the court's intervention on EVMs on a few occasions, but not truly effectively. I don't think all the issues which we are going to discuss today have been brought to the notice of the court, of the Supreme Court. And therefore, it's important to assess today also, because now elections are coming. Okay? So it's important to assess whether what the speakers are going to say. Okay, apart from it being a campaign which about rectifying the mistakes, the flaws in the EVM system. Apart from that, I think it's also important to discuss a bit about whether we can make out some kind of a case which we can take to the court. We will have to first, of course, take it to the election commissioner, and then, if required, go to court. I mean, that's something which we are talking in terms of hypothesis. But that is one of the aspects which becomes necessary. Some cases are still pending, as I mentioned, in the Supreme Court, which are about to come up, which are about to be heard. But many of these cases do not take up the aspects which we are discussing today. Okay? So people have been attacking EVM from different directions, from different angles. Okay? But I feel having heard Mr. Deshpande as well as Kannan earlier, I feel they are talking about issues which are not yet raised in a big way about the flaws in the EVM system. So I think it's important that we listen to them. It's important that we see whether what they are saying. We can discuss what they are because they are not only talking about the flaws, but they will also be talking about what are the ways of solving those problems. And according to them, I believe that many of the solutions are not very difficult. They are easy. They can be done even in 1 month's time or 2 months' time. So we need to look at all these aspects, because ultimately what we want and what our constitution guarantees is not just elections, but free and fair elections, which is a fundamental right. That having a free and fair election is fundamental right. And therefore, it becomes important that whatever way whenever we cast our ballot, that ballot is cast in the name of the same organ, same party, same symbol. Okay, it's recorded in the name of the same symbol and the same party for whom we are casting the ballot. That becomes very central. I will stop here.